I believe if I'm translating this right, I think he's charged on like 11 felony charges. Looks like an official indictment for him.
He had told me that the federal government had come to his house and it absolutely ransacked his place.
What if getting on a call with him, he just instantly takes all of my info? This story didn't come to me all at once. It started back in 2020 when my good friend Stig, a trusted sort of in with the trading community, let me know about some rumors of a mysterious person in the trading community.
There was stories that everyone would always talk about this like mysterious guy, like no last name. I've been in the trade scene for a while, never ran into this guy once, but apparently this guy came into the trade scene and bought a white hat. And it's not super common. It does happen, but it's really uncommon for some no name to buy a white hat to begin with. It's usually like the same group of traders, that you hear about, just them getting circulated around between big traders. But he came in, and what was even more interesting about this guy is he started charging a flat rate, like well above market value for these white hats. And he ended up buying I think what I remember, and this may not be accurate, but I think he ended up buying about 10, 11, 12 white hats. And at the time there was maybe 24, 25, 26. There's less than 30 white hats. So, he was very quickly getting up to about half the white hats. About a month later, I heard that he just sold it. He dumped them all, and he dumped them for a substantial loss of money. And then he just kind of disappeared. No one ever heard of him after that. Yeah, it's really all that I know. I know, I've heard, some rumors of, he scammed the money in real life through some pretty elaborate ways. I've heard that he was a scammer. I heard he was just somebody who quickly kind of fell out of love with the game Rocket League. A lot of mystery going on around him. I heard he was, involved in some kind of fraudulent scams with crypto. I heard he somehow hacked into large cryptocurrency accounts and essentially committed fraud on, I've heard numbers as much as, $1 million in cryptocurrency. Yeah, so, just some crazy rumors out there with this guy. Even the white hat owners don't really know. Yeah, so, I don't know too much of the scammer community, but I know there was a very infamous scammer named Echo, and I know that a few people affiliated Eric with Echo's alt account. So I have heard rumors that, it could have just potentially been a very successful Rocket League scammer. And I do know that there are certainly scammers out there successful enough to certainly pull off that kind of inventory.
Now, I wasn't sure what the best route was at this point. Who was this person? Was he an elaborate scammer? Was he really a crypto thief? I decided it would be easier to start with the scammer route, and fortunately, Stig had given me a name. This person named Echo. I was also given a scam list with Echo's name on it and a bunch of different accounts that were apparently associated with him. And the one that actually led me to a real account that I could actually connect with was this Twitter. Apparently, Echo has moved on with his life. He's went from scamming Rocket League noobs to 3D modeling some anime chicks. Actually, this stuff is pretty cool and pretty well done. And it turns out this isn't Echo. This guy knew nothing about what I was talking about. He said he'd played a few hours of Rocket League, but that he knew nothing about a scammer, and I believed him. There was no reason in what we were saying to think that this was him. Getting in contact with Echo really looked like it wasn't going to happen because he had disappeared from the Rocket League scene years ago. Now that's when I got a message from Stig. Apparently he had something really important to tell me, so we jumped on a call.
So I think I found a big bombshell with who this Eric kid actually is. Here, I'm gonna just send you the link. According to justice.gov, he might be in some serious shit. Yeah, so it looks like him being a real life scammer might be the truth. There's I believe if I'm translating this right, I think he's charged on 11 felony charges. Looks like an official indictment for him.
Now, was this Eric Meigs or Eric Meigs, whatever, really our person? Was this really E? Were all of those white hats and big trades coming from dirty cryptocurrency? So I figured that it probably made more sense to have a proper sit down with this, so I actually printed the full indictment off. And if you can see this right here, it says sealed. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be reading this, but whatever. So I'm gonna give it a read through. There's 15 pages here, and try to figure out what really happened with this guy. Okay, so I have not read every single word of this whole thing. It's really quite long. There's some really funny parts actually in this. Well, I don't know if this is funny, but to me it's kind of funny. You can just tell this was written by somebody who, I wouldn't know all of these things, so it's okay. But you can tell they didn't know every single thing in here. So my favorite description in here is talking about OG accounts and like what OG means, and it just made me laugh. I don't know why. Here we go. So when a social media handle is especially short, common, or a well-known word or phrase, for example, John, like @John or @Awesome, that handle carries a particular cachet because the ability to capture such a common word for individual use suggests that the user was an especially early adopter of that social media network. Such high-value accounts are sometimes referred to as OG account, with OG an acronym for, kid you not, original gangster. I don't even know if you can see that, but it's on the page. Yes, this indictment literally says original gangster in it. An acronym for original gangster referring to veteran gang members, or in this case, veteran social media users. So essentially, it sounds like this guy, Eric, and another person were doing some really bad stuff. They were committing fraud, 11 counts. Jeez, 11 counts. 1 count of conspiracy to commit computer fraud and abuse and wire fraud. 2 through 9, so 8 accounts of wire fraud, aiding and abetting. 1 account of computer fraud and abuse, aiding and abetting. Aggravated identity theft. Jeez. So basically they were getting a hold of people's SIM cards, I think. That was a big part of it. And so they'd find these people who have like a lot of cryptocurrency, and they would basically like call their like phone people or something. They would call like their phone company and say like they needed a new SIM card. I don't know, I don't fully understand like how they did it, but it was SIM swapping and account takeovers. So they were also taking over people's accounts. Whew. What if getting on a call with him, he just instantly takes all of my info? I don't think that's possible, right?
At this point, I needed to validate that E and Eric were in fact the same person, and Stig came through again. I guess sort of explain to me kind of who you are and I guess what your role is in this story, or yeah.
So anyone who doesn't know who I am, I'm MrDrProf. I am the oldest and most experienced Rocket League middleman. I started way back in 2015 on Reddit, and I've moved all places like PS4 communities, Xbox hubs, Discord, and I met Eric. At the time, all I knew him was E, just E with a period, and this was a few years ago when he came into the Rocket League scene. He was just straight off the bat buying white hats and alpha items, but I ended up middlemaning a few of his hats just because at the time I happened to be a middleman for Trade Central, like just getting into it and still middlemaning on Reddit. And my initial thought of him was that he was a scammer. Obviously, if somebody just randomly comes in the training community and starts buying shit tons of items, expensive, high end, it's as expensive as you can get, it's going to draw a few red flags. And at the time, there was a active scammer by the name of Echo. He ran with some of the bigger scammers back in the day, and this is, like I said, this is like 3-4 years ago. And in my head, I saw the correlation of Echo, E Echo. So I thought maybe this was him on alt account, and I actually ended up throwing together a Pastebin link where I detailed all the research I had done into who E was and why I thought he was Echo. So in a middleman call, Eric sent a screenshot. His computer specs were on the top left, because there are certain programs that will overlay your computer specs and how fast your CPU is running at the top left. He had blurred those out in a screenshot he sent. The game was in such low quality, despite him claiming that he had a high tier PC. I had compared the specs that E had said to us, and it matched the scammer Echo, and that was kind of the conclusion I was drawing, correlating the two. And Eric E at the time had also claimed he had 3 accounts. Now that I figured out he used to buy and sell accounts, that makes more sense, but at the time it didn't really make sense for someone to have 3 accounts unless they were doing something shady. Another thing that kind of stuck out was, if he was a Bitcoin miner, why did he randomly decide to just be like, hey, there's Rocket League, let's just flex $10,000 Where did this interest in Rocket League come from?
What was his total inventory? Like, what was the value, like the dollar value at that time of his total inventory at like its peak, would you estimate?
My guess is that, well, at least in this screenshot that I have saved, he had 4 white hats and an alpha cap. So I'd say 50K. That's $50,000 or more. So after I figured out that it wasn't Echo, I did start talking to him, and I was like, hey, for your safety, my safety, and like the conscience, not the conscience, I guess the conscience of all the staff members that are like freaking out because this random guy just joined and bought a bunch of stuff. I was like, can you tell me like what's going on? Like, where'd you get this money? Where'd you come from? And he ended up just explaining to me, I used to buy and sell OG accounts on OGusers.com. It's for like Xbox accounts for like unique names, original gamer tags, which are like single word, no letter or like no numbers instead of letters, kind of like if you were to have a like mouse, capital MOUSE.
Yeah.
Just that name, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so those have value because people don't want to have their name be XXX, whatever.
Eventually, he ended up cashing out, and I was kind of confused as he didn't really tell me why. Like, I didn't really get a straight answer. I think I didn't hear from him for a few months, and then he came back to Discord with some random spam letter and name and added me and started talking to me. He's like, hey, it's Eric. Some shit happened. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, what the fuck happened? And he goes, well, remember when I told you about the Bitcoin stuff? And I'm like, yeah, OG users selling accounts, buying, flipping them. He goes, so that wasn't exactly how I got all my Bitcoin? And he went into detail about how he was a SIM swapper. And I believe you covered it, but just as a refresher, he would call some random rich person or however he targeted people, and he called their service provider and say, hey, I lost my SIM card stopped working, I need a new one. And then he would hold their phone and their information hostage with that unless they paid him with Bitcoin. He had told me that the federal government had come to his house and they absolutely ransacked his place. Like, the picture I saw was just his room, and there's no other way to put it than there was shit spewing about. It was everything. It was torn up. Like, how your parents would always say, oh, your place looks like a tornado hit? It literally looked like a tornado hit. They tore his place up, and he mentioned that he had been arrested, and one of his friends was arrested too, and man's got brain problems. I mean, let's be honest, don't we all?
Yeah, on some level, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like burnt sienna. Where else do I begin?
I mean, listen, that might even be worse. All of this was interesting and honestly somewhat disturbing, but I wanted to take the story one step further. What if we could somehow talk to this guy? Like, what if we could talk to Eric and find out exactly what happened from his perspective? As far as I knew, Eric was still maybe even in the middle of an investigation, maybe even a trial, so I didn't think that this would be possible, but after a bit of digging and finding the right connections, I was given a way to reach out to Eric, and to my shock, he agreed to a candid interview.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, man?
What's good, bud? Prof and Stig explained it like a documentary about me. Why me? Where did that come in?
Your story had been brought up to me a while ago, but it was all just like rumors. I didn't really know anything about it. So I thought it would be interesting to make a video sort of like tracking you down, and ultimately the whole video is basically made except for this last part, which is us like talking. And
yeah.
Has your attorney cleared you to talk about anything and everything? And does your attorney and whatever your legal sort of authorities, do they know that you're doing this, and are they okay with it? Mainly your attorney.
Yeah, I had to get permission from my lawyer, but yeah, I'm free to speak about a majority of it.
Okay.
There's some parts that my lawyer doesn't want me to discuss, but I'm free to speak about a majority of it.
And that's because you pled guilty already.
Yeah.
I guess first question, are you a gamer? Did you come from a background in gaming, and how did you end up, in the situation where you're getting all these items in these gaming communities, and specifically Rocket League?
So I grew up playing Xbox, and then I, traveled over to PC and I played Counter-Strike, and from Counter-Strike I started opening cases and collecting skins, and then every game that I went and played, I just bought skins for.
You were already a gamer, so when you did all this stuff and like suddenly you have like hundreds of thousands of dollars, were you just like, okay, I might as well just go buy a bunch of like dumb stuff in video games? Is that kind of what happened?
Well, before I did all the dumb stuff, I've been programming since 2012, and I've been taking Bitcoin since then, so I had an incredible amount of money before I even started doing it. But,
oh, interesting.
you know, I was young and dumb, so I couldn't resist the fact that you could make even more money. Like, I was told you can make $100,000 in 15 minutes without even standing up. You know, who's gonna deny that?
So you were roped into this by other people? Like someone sort of showed you this and showed you how to do it, or how'd you get into it?
Nobody showed me how to do it. Actually, with the programming, I programmed stuff to get usernames on platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and I ended up selling those, which is how I acquired a majority of my money before I did the dumb things. Somebody came to me and bought the Instagram pimp from me for $50,000, which is it was not worth anywhere near that. It was around 10K. So I befriended him and I asked him, like, how do you have so much money? And then one night he got drunk and explained to me that he did what I did. And then I spent months after that trying to figure out how to do it on my own.
The whole SIM swapping thing.
Yeah, I found, like, he told me that he swapped the SIM cards on people's phones. And then I spent months trying to figure out how to do it on my own because he wouldn't tell me. And then 6-8 months later, I finally figured out how to do it on my own. Then I started adapting and moving to different carriers and, you know, just making as much money as possible because I didn't realize the consequences at the time. I spent some time in prison, like, after I got arrested until the initial appearance in court. And thank God for my lawyer because they wanted to keep me locked up until I got sentenced. The prosecutor, like, and I quote, said that I was a threat to national security because they weren't aware and they didn't know how it was done. The first person that got arrested, which was an acquaintance of mine, so when we did sim people, we would have, you know, the actual person who called and activated the SIM card, and then we would have somebody with a burner phone and burner SIM cards, and he was one of the people who had the burner phone and SIM cards because the person he worked with lived out of the country, so they couldn't arrest him. So he got arrested and then he couldn't tell them how to do it, so he told on me and my friends, and then I ended up in that situation. And then they've tried to get me to work for them to take down other people that do the same thing. That goes against, like, my morals. I grew up in a kind of terrible neighborhood. I don't want to be one of those people. At first, the sentencing was 7 minimum to 14 years, and now it's 2 to 3.
Gotcha. Okay. So this isn't gonna end your whole life.
No. The reason why I dropped so low is because I didn't want to work with them, but I did a proffer, which I go with the agents and the prosecutors, and I admit every crime that I've ever committed, and they can use those crimes to gather evidence to prosecute me further for the current charges. But after this case, they can't pile on charges or attempt to retry me for further charges as long as I give them nothing but the truth and tell them straight up how much I took and what I did.
You got charged with what was it, $500,000?
Yeah, 550.
But really it's like way more than that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I started playing Rocket League around the alpha, around 2015, and then I stopped for a few, and then I started playing again, and then, you know, I just said, whatever, I'll buy items. And then I bought the white hat, and then, you know, I'm kind of a competitive person. I'm not gonna say his name, but he flaunted the fact that he had 4 white hats. So I bought 4, and then he said he had 6. So I bought 7, and then he actually said he had 3. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I win.
So what was your total account worth at that time?
Probably around 80,000. Because, like, not only did I have the white hats and alpha sets, but, like, I bought, like, tons of, like, striker sets and, like, tons of striker white octanes. Like, I had so much stuff. Like, I gave all my friends, like, striker white octanes and striker black ices and, like, everything they ever wanted. Like I said, I dropped out in the 9th grade, so I really just, like kind of lived on the internet. Like I just made all my money online. That's all I did. I spent my free time gaming, and then most of the day I would program stuff and just try to make money.
Have you done any scamming, like in games? Obviously, it doesn't really matter, you know, with what you're facing, you can admit that you've done some scamming. I don't think that would matter. But have you done any scamming, like in Rocket League or other games?
No, that's just one thing that I'm against because of the whole OG username business. Like, I like to keep the reputation as a legitimate businessman. Like,
okay.
So I've had plenty of opportunities, but never once and never would I, like, ever. I would never take money away from somebody who earned it or like from scratch. The people that I did target for money were filthy rich narcissistic people. It wasn't like I was actually like hurting people, and you know, I would take a fraction of their money when I got in. I wouldn't bankrupt them.
Okay, so because there was rumors about you potentially being a scammer who also had whose name also started with an E, which was Echo, and a bunch of people thought that, or some people thought that you, when you showed up and were doing all this stuff, that you were this other Rocket League scammer named Echo. But that you're saying that's not true at all?
No, the only alias that I've ever gone by in the Rocket League community is just my name.
So, what was your thoughts like when it all started going wrong? When like the FBI like raided your house or apartment or whatever? What was that like?
I went to sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning, got woken up at 5:30 with 40 agents at my house, dragging me outside in handcuffs, ripping my entire house apart. And then following that, I got interrogated for 14 hours.
Did you admit it right away?
No, I kind of messed with the agents because I was tired and sleep deprived, and they really didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah. So were you worried at that point that it was all going to go bad, or?
No, really. The only thing I just kept asking them was like, when am I going to go home? You know, I didn't know what they had on me. I just kept playing it dumb until I got my lawyer.
Did you kind of enjoy like being in I guess just sort of like the thrill and intensity of doing this kind of thing and dealing with potentially getting hacked and all that stuff?
So it was kind of a thrill to me, yeah. But then, you know, waking up to flashbangs and getting smacked with SWAT shields kind of changes it. But
like, what is your plan for the future? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be once this is all over? And how do you want to like sort of use, because you obviously have an insane amount of skills. Like, what's like, you know, I could see you seem like a good guy. Like, I could see you using your skills for good in some way.
I honestly just don't feel comfortable like doing anything that involves hacking anymore, even white hat, like pen testing.
Yeah.
So I'm fluent in 11 different like languages for software, so I'm probably just gonna, after all this is over, just go down the route of software development.
The last thing I wanted to ask you, one of the people I interviewed said that you were, and maybe this is that program you talked about, but that you were able to get the sentence like lowered or whatever because you and your lawyer were claiming that you didn't really understand what you were doing, or that you didn't know that it was wrong, essentially, and that has helped you. Is that true, or like how is that all working out?
Well, when I was younger, I was diagnosed with like a ton of mental illnesses. Like I have bipolar type 3, ADHD, anxiety, depression, insomnia, like tons of like mental illnesses.
Okay.
And with bipolar type 3, when you're kind of like hooked on something like simming and stealing money, you don't really look further to the future for consequences, because I wasn't taking medication at the time. Now I take medication, but back then, like with bipolar, I wasn't able to actually comprehend the fact that there was like actual consequences to what I was doing because it was on a computer.
With bipolar, I've researched it a little bit. I forget if it's type 1 or type 2, but one of them, like, you go on like potentially can go on like a 7-day sort of thing where you have no idea what you're doing. People will go out and like lose all their money in gambling and come back and like, I guess it's like mania essentially. Is that? Yeah,
that's type 3 has very, very high tendencies for like manic moods. The argument was that like a majority of the time I was manic. Obviously I wasn't aware of it, but I was to an extent. And with being manic, you have like tendencies of like a sociopath, so you don't really understand or comprehend that there's consequences. You don't look for the future, you don't think about anyone besides really yourself. During it, you don't really realize that it's happening, but you get like periods of like excitement, like addiction, euphoria, delusions, like etc. So it's like during it, you don't realize. Like with type 3, it can happen for months, even years at a time. With type 1, you know, it can happen for a week or two. Type 3 is obviously the worst. So during it, you don't really realize, but after, like, you know, it really hits you.
Yeah, that's what this video said, is that when someone comes down from like a period of mania, it's so bad because they're like, that can send you into like severe depression and stuff because like you said, it hits you what you've been doing. Like, yeah,
I wasn't even able to get out of the manic phase that I was in until I started experimenting with hallucinogenics. Like I did LSD and I realized like everything I actually did wrong. And that's when I actually stopped simming people, and that was a year and 7 months before I got raided.
Oh, wow.
So I was completely like reformed from anything illegal before I even got the subpoenas. And then I got the subpoenas and arrested, and that's another argument that my lawyer does use. It's the fact that I stopped way before I even got in trouble because I realized what I was doing was wrong. People probably see like what I've done and probably think I'm some arrogant like piece of trash or something, but I'm actually not. When you get to know me, I'm actually a genuine person.
Okay, awesome. Is this the first time anybody's like interviewed you?
I've had like news people like CNN and NBC and like, but I refused those. But I really only did this with you because, you know, Rocket League. I love that game.
Yeah. Hey, we all love Rocket League, right? So you turned down CNN, but you accepted to do an interview with me. Dude, I think it just shows what you care about. You know, as like you said, an online boy and a gamer and stuff, like you don't really give a crap about probably the random old dude who's probably just going to judge you more no matter what you say. This is like your actual world and your community, like the online world and like the gaming world. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
After the call was over with Eric, I thought for a long while about what I'd learned from this whole process, this whole investigation, and especially this conversation with him. I really didn't have like a plan or a motive when I jumped on a call with him. I'd been told by some people that he was a really genuine and good guy, and that there were reasons behind what happened. This isn't in any way meant to justify what he did or try to lessen the impact of what he did. And I don't think he was trying to do that at all. I think it's just important to hear everyone's side of the story and try to understand people better. I'm not going to pretend to at all be an expert on mental illness and things like bipolar, anxiety, depression, but I know a lot of people in the gaming community and in the Rocket League community suffer from these things. And Eric is really an example of somebody who, if he could have gotten some help earlier on, maybe some of these things could have been avoided. I realized this was a lot longer than most of the videos that I make or most of the videos that you're probably used to, like seeing in the Rocket League community, but I think it needed to be this long. I didn't want to cut out big major sections of the story because then it really wouldn't make sense. I wanted the entire story to be told as I sort of saw it unfold and experienced it. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it and it got you thinking. One of the biggest things I've learned from really talking to traders and people who are really involved in the community is that there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. This is one of many stories of things happening that people just don't know about or realize. And I do plan on making more videos like this, really diving into the community and some of the things that have happened that maybe you guys haven't heard about or don't know about. Leave a like if you enjoyed this Rocket League documentary, and we'll see you in the next one.